welcome to Eurovision debate. There is just over a week to go before Europe goes to the polls in the European Parliament elections. So tonight, we put the big questions to the people who want to lead the European Commission for the next 5 years.
We are live from the European Parliament in Brussels, where 6 candidates for the position of President of the European Commission will make their pitch for Europe's top job. We're live across Europe on members of Eurovision, but we are also being watched around the world online. You're all very welcome.
So we are your hosts. I am Émilie Tranduyen, news anchor from French TV.
I'm Markus Preiss, EU correspondent with ALDE German TV.
And I am Anna-Stina Heikkilä. I work as a correspondent for the Finnish television in Paris, and I will be guiding you through the debate on social media.
But it's not about us. It's about the candidates for Europe's top job. So please welcome Nico, a Spanish-born Belgian trade unionist and lead candidate for the European left. From Germany, Keller for the European Green Party. It's her second Eurovision debate. From the Czech Republic, Zahradil, member of the European Parliament for Alliance of Conservatives and Reformists in Europe.
From Denmark, acting EU Competition Commissioner Margrethe Vestager for the Alliance of Liberals and Democrats for Europe. From Germany, Manfred Weber, chairman of the European People's Party in the European Parliament and Spitzenkandidate. And finally, from the Netherlands, Frans Timmermans, first Vice President of the European Commission, the candidate of the Party of European Socialists. But this debate is nothing without you all over Europe. And that's where Anna-Stina comes in.
Yes, I will be your social media host this evening, so you are a crucial part of this debate. Throughout the program, I will be monitoring the millions of Europeans who are following us online, asking questions, reacting and engaging with us in the digital world. So tell us what matters to you by using the hashtag #TellEurope and make your voice heard.
Of course, every debate has rules, and this one is no different. So, this debate will last 90 minutes. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question. And during the debate, they will have each 2 opportunities to challenge other candidates.
And we really encourage all of you to make use of this rebuttal card, because then we have lively debate here on stage. Each participant will also have the opportunity to make opening and closing statements. The speaking order was decided in a draw. And let's begin. Nico, the floor is yours.
Good evening. My name is Nico. I am a candidate for the European Left Party. I was born in Asturias, in the north of Spain, where my father was a miner. But he was forced to leave Spain because he was opposed to the Franco regime, the dictatorship. We were welcomed in Belgium by people who showed a lot of solidarity towards us. We were able to build a home, work, study, and it's this solidarity that really gave me the desire to work with Europe. It's a Europe of solidarity that I've always fought for as a trade union representative, and that is the Europe that I want to continue to defend. But unfortunately, this is also the Europe of tax evasion, the Europe of the banks, the Europe that has failed to show solidarity. So I would like to create a Europe of solidarity.
Hello everyone. This debate and these elections are important because people from all over Europe are looking at us and they're asking for solutions. They know many things are going wrong from the climate crisis to austerity to the backlash against democracy and civil liberties, Europe is struggling to fulfill the promises that has been built on. And tonight, I want to make the case for a different Europe, one that protects our common planet, the only one that we have, a social Europe where everyone finds decent housing and has a decent wage. We, as Greens, take the battle for a European Union where the big companies pay their fair share, where women are truly treated equal, where minorities are respected, human rights are protected. I know it is possible to build this different Europe if we build it together and if we build it with courage.
Thank you very much, Ska Keller. And next in line is Jan Zahradil.
Good evening, everyone. I believe that we cannot meet all those new challenges of 21st century with old and outdated scheme of ever closer union, which has been designed 50 years ago for a different age. Therefore, I would propose rather EU which is scaled back, which is flexible, which is decentralized. I would like to have European Commission which respects all its members, regardless whether they are big or small, or whether they are from the West or from the East. I would like to have European Commission which respects national governments and which cooperates with them, which doesn't fight them, which doesn't patronize them, which doesn't lecture them. Simply speaking, I would like to have European Union which is doing less but better, and which is able to find new equilibrium between national and European level. And this is the European Union, and this is the change I am ready and able to deliver.
Thank you, Jan Zahradil. Margrethe, Vestager, it's your turn.
I am Margrethe Vestager. I'm from Denmark. My husband and I have 3 daughters. I was a minister, a political leader. Today I work for you. As Commissioner of Competition, I make sure that businesses play by the rule book. So you, as a consumer, have choice, quality, and fair prices. For me, the most important thing is that you are empowered to live the life you want to live in your community, that you feel counted in, and that you have a fair chance of making it. Europe is the best place to live today, especially if you're a woman. We have achieved so much. That doesn't make everything good. We have work to do to fight climate change, to deal with technology, to create societies built on the rule of law where you can provide for yourself, to make that everyday life. That's why I'm here.
Thank you very much, Margrethe Vestager. And we take it to Manfred Weber, please.
I want to thank you. I had the opportunity in the last weeks and months during my electoral campaign to travel a lot around the European Union and to meet a lot of Europeans. And I experienced that we have the same concerns, even the same fears, and the same hopes for the future of our continent. And what I want to tell you with this is the method, how I want to work on Commission level, on European level. A Europe which is close to people, a Europe which cares about the concrete issues from the citizens, a Commission of the people. That is what I want to work for. And having this in mind, I think Jean-Claude Juncker, the current Commission President, called and named his Commission the Commission of the Last Chance. And he is an EPP Commission President. I think he did a good job. I want to call the next Commission not the Commission of the Last Chance. I want to call it the Commission of a fresh start, of a new era, of readiness, openness, for optimism, for showing to the world that we can achieve as Europeans so much together.
Thank you, my friend Weber. Finally, Franz Timmermans.
Thank you. Good evening. You know, you have the future of Europe in the palm of your hands. Next week you will decide the fate of Europe in the next 5 years. There are those who say that Europe and its citizens are best served by breaking down the European Union. I don't believe in that. There are those who say to avoid breaking down the European Union, we have to maintain it as it is. I don't believe that either. I believe to save and strengthen Europe, we need to fundamentally reform Europe. It's time big companies finally started paying taxes. It's time we introduce the minimum wage in every member state. It is time we have equality in pay of men and women. It is time we put an end to violence against women in Europe. It is time we enforce the rule of law in every member state so that everybody abides by the rules. It is time we put the climate crisis and sustainability on the very, very top of the list of the next Commission. That is my proposal to you tonight.
Thank you, Franz Timmermans. Thank you to all for your introduction. But, you know, it's your debate to you in front of your screen. So let me join Anastina now online for our social media hosts. Anastina, maybe there is already some reaction, some tweets regarding this debate.
Yes, Emily, welcome to the social media hub. As you see, we are here following all your comments and questions with my team. And yes, the conversation, it has already started. It has been very lively. Questions have actually been pouring in already before the debate. Hashtag Tell Europe, it is already trending in Belgium and in Germany. And as you can imagine, there are some topics that are already very popular online. Any idea what they are? Well, let me tell you. Brexit, climate change, digital privacy and migration. In fact, Sea-Watch have tweeted using hashtag Tell Europe that they rescued 65 people from the Mediterranean today. So clearly this is a major issue. So make your voice heard, keep your comments coming and questions coming and use the hashtag Tell Europe. Let's get back to the main stage and get started with the debate.
Thank you very much, Anastina, for this first glimpse into the social media landscape. And we are also starting on migration. This has been the topic most mentioned by many Europeans when surveyed about their concerns. But Europe has failed to find a common political solution for the problem. The ideas of resettlement are met with opposition, and even for a few dozens of migrants arriving on ships like the Sea-Watch or on the ACRE, we see our governments fighting who is going to take them. So our question to you is, given the fracture, the tensions we see about migration, would you, as a Commission President, drop the efforts to find a common solution? And if not, how do you solve the problem? The question goes to Mr. Zahradil, please.
Thank you. First of all, I have to say that I would never repeat the same mistake like the current Commission by introducing mandatory quota, which unfortunately didn't work and which unfortunately only deepened the divide between eastern part and western part of Europe. I believe that we should find another solution. We should respect the sovereign right of governments and parliaments in member states to grant or not to grant asylum, to grant or not to grant temporary or permanent settlement or even citizenship. What we have to do is, however, to fight human trafficking and human smuggling. What we have to do is to outsource reception centers to outside of the European Union. Otherwise, we won't be able to fight trafficking and smuggling. We, of course, have to somehow conduct readmission agreements with other countries, and that they will be willing, so we have to cooperate closely. And first of all, we have to help stabilize the situation in Africa.
Thank you, Mr. Zahradil. Margrethe Weber, what would you do?
The only chance is a European solution, no doubt about this. And there are two main pillars for us as EPP. One pillar is that the state controls who is arriving in Europe and not the smugglers. That we have to win back the control on our border, and that must be clear. That's why we ask for 10,000 Frontex officers immediately established to control the borders. The second element is when Pope Francis is in front of the Mediterranean Sea in Lampedusa and is reminding us on our humanitarian responsibility, we have to take over this responsibility. We have to care. That means resettlement for Syria. That means a big Marshall Plan for Africa. I want to establish a commissioner only dealing with African interests to make also from the structure of the Commission clear that we prioritize on these things. And there are the two sides of the medal, strict border control and humanitarian responsibility. And my party did it. So Angela Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany, we showed that we take over responsibility, and Angela Merkel, together with Jean-Claude Juncker, showed also that we are ready to have a Turkey agreement where we win back the control on our border. So both elements are crucial.
Thank you very much, Manfred Weber. Mr. Cué, would you drop the efforts?
Well, let me recall that immigration is first and foremost a human drama, and I'm actually the son of an illegal immigrant. My parents arrived here without any documents, and more than 30,000 people have been killed in the Mediterranean. 50 people were killed just yesterday in the Mediterranean when a boat capsized. And I think the European Union has a great responsibility here, and all of the policies that have led to destabilization need to be revised. For the European left, we believe that migration is an opportunity. I'm an example of that. This is an opportunity for a series of people who don't have the opportunity back home in their countries to flourish. For us, we don't believe that it's about the invasion of Europe. We're talking about 0.5% of the population, and these people can contribute to rejuvenating Europe. I am the son of a migrant, and I think the statement of Mr. Weber, where he talked about a final solution for immigration, is scandalous.
Thank you. Margrethe Vestager, what would you do when migrants are arriving on ships like the Aquarius, for example?
Well, I think the important thing is to treat sort of the long-term stable solution with the same urgency as saving life at sea. Because otherwise we will never get to a solution, because migration is here to stay, because of climate change, because of changes in economic conditions. But the most important thing is that I see Europeans having an open, big heart for refugees, to protect people in need of protection. And at the same time, to expect us to find ways to manage migration and to make it legal. Because we cannot have people coming and going without knowing. And in that, of course, we need exactly common solutions. We need a common asylum system, and we need a common solidarity. And we can discuss how to make that happen, but we need to do that together, because otherwise we'd fail.
Thank you, Margrethe Vestager. So we heard a lot about what we should do. Franz Timmermans, as acting first vice president of the Commission, saw what is difficult to do. What could be done better under your watch as president of the European Commission?
I think, first of all, every time a person dies in the Mediterranean, Europe loses a bit of its soul. So we're losing who we are. We're losing our values by not solving this problem. Secondly, once people are on boats in the Mediterranean, you have to take care of these people. And you shouldn't put fines on fishermen or other people in other boats who rescue people at sea, like the Italian government is doing now. That is unacceptable. Thirdly, you have to prevent people from getting on those boats in the first place. And for that, you really need, I agree with Manfred Weber, a huge plan for Africa. You need to understand that Europe's destiny is linked to Africa's destiny. Only with these measures and better border protection and agreements with third countries, we will not solve it. We also need solidarity in Europe. Solidarity is not just for things you like, it's also sometimes for things you don't like. And if Central and Eastern European countries continue to refuse solidarity, sooner or later, borders will be back in Europe where they don't belong. And that would be to the detriment of every citizen in Europe. We need to prevent that. We need solidarity.
Gives a clear perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Franz Timmermans. Keller, as a president of the European Commission, what would you do?
We stand clearly for a European solidarity. We need to fairly share the responsibility that we need to face. We also need to support the communities that are actually doing so much already to welcome people in need. Many cities, many people, many initiatives are helping. But really, what is absolutely unacceptable is what's happening right now in the Mediterranean. People are drowning, and we know where they are. They are calling the search and rescue center. No one is picking up the phone. The Italians are telling them to call the Libyans. In Libya, no one is answering the phone. There is a civil war in Libya. There is no Coast Guard, and we're even giving to those militias which call themselves Coast Guards support. This should not happen. We need to have a European search and rescue effort, because we should not allow that any single person dies in the Mediterranean.
Thank you. Thank you, Keller. Thanks for the first round of answers. Our second question is on youth unemployment. If you look into the details, you see there is a huge gap between countries in the north and east, and those like Greece, Portugal, Italy, or even France. Youth unemployment in Greece, for instance, is at 39%. But what is the explanation for that? Too much austerity, like in Greece or Portugal, or maybe not enough reforms, like perhaps in France or in Italy? Our question to the candidate: how would you try to bring the more than 3.3 million young Europeans back into jobs? Mr. Zahradil, the floor is yours.
Well, first of all, let's be very clear that this is not the European Commission which creates jobs. Businesses create jobs, and European Commission can create business-friendly environment by good legislation and by funding good programs from its budget. And some good programs have been already developed. We have, for instance, Digital Europe, funded by, I think, 10 billion of euros. We have also Horizon Europe, which is supporting research and development with another part of the European budget. And we have also Invest EU, which combines private and public resources for improving infrastructure. So what I believe is that we need some tailor-made solutions for each and every country, because our economies are very diverse. Structures of our national economies are different. And if you look at Europe, you can see that in some countries is actually unemployment very low. In my own country, it's less than 3%. So tailor-made solutions, encouragement of new programs and good legislation. These are my solutions.
Thank you, Jan Zahradil. We take it to Manfred Weber. Germany also always insists on austerity, on the 3% criteria. Is this also a cause for the youth unemployment in the south we're seeing, and are you going to change something about it?
Well, I remind the Germans, the Dutch, the Austrians, the Finnish, who are doing quite well at the moment economically, that we only can have a good future if we can create jobs and growth, especially for the young generation in the south. We only can answer the challenges together. So it's responsibility and solidarity. Together, we have to bring these things in one line. And I want to describe one element. I was in Portugal, in Porto. I met with young students there. And they told me that, Franz, they were not first of all asking about minimum wages, because that is one of the proposals from the socialists. They were asking, the young generation of the south is asking for jobs, for good paid jobs, for good salaries, to establish their own families. And that's why we need a good economic policy to create these jobs. And that is infrastructure, that is research, that is openness for trade, and that is for all of us to practice a strong single market, to establish even a stronger single market for the future. So social is what is creating jobs.
Thank you, Martin Weber. Just remember, you have two rebuttal cards to challenge other candidates. So, Nico, do you agree with Manfred Weber? A good economy policy is a solution to get unemployment down in Europe?
No, I don't think so. Because they're in power now, and they've been in power for a long time. But the policies are completely not up to the job. With the euro, more austerity, labour law reforms, precarious work at wages and salaries which often are below the minimum wage, and at the same time increasing the pensionable ages, which means that the older people are working until 65 and young people are sitting at home out of a job. We have to put an end to precarious work and get back to proper labour contracts which have got prospects, not just 0 hours contracts which don't give young people any kind of future, and a European minimum wage which is worth getting up for in the morning. That's what young people want, and this proper labour contracts should be on offer to young people across Europe. Thank you.
Margrethe Vestager, is it just like the general business environment we can do something about, but not really giving an answer to millions of young Europeans who want a job?
Well, I think we can do both, because European countries have come together to make sure that in every country there is an offer of education or training or a specific job. Because with no job, you just open the door to no future. And of course, it's a very good point that we need a strong economy. We need to invest. We need to make sure that businesses can do business and grow. And we see jobs are being created in Europe. I think more than 12 million jobs over the last 5 years. But a lot of those jobs, they don't pay very well. And we should agree that we should promote an economy where you can make a decent living when you have a full-time job. And that may be another discussion than having a sort of fixed minimum wage, because we have different systems. And that, I think, is important to respect that, because we need to call on the social partners to help us out, because the European Union as such can do something, but together with member states, then we can solve it.
Thank you, Margrethe Vestager. So, Frans Timmermans, you can answer as the Vice President of the European Commission or as a future President of the European Commission.
Well, first of all, when I'm in Portugal, young people in Portugal ask me, when Antonio Costa came with plans to create more social justice, to create more jobs, to create more economic growth, and the European Commission said, go ahead, Manfred Weber said, no, punish Portugal, punish Portugal. So that's the question I get. But coming back to the question on the young people, first of all, very concretely, let's expand Erasmus to every young person in Europe, regardless of whether they are in school or in university or in high school, or whether they have a job or not a job. It gives them an experience to learn from other member states. Secondly, make sure there is a minimum wage that is on average 60% of median wage. That will protect young people against these jobs where they get €2 or €3 an hour. Thirdly, Youth Guarantee Plan. Expand the Youth Guarantee Plan. It's been very successful in quite a number of member states. We should expand that. And more than that, lower the voting age to 16 years so that young people have a bigger say in the decisions we take at national and European level.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frans Timmermans. I already thought they agree on everything, apparently, but no, we saw the first rebuttal card from Manfred Weber. So 30 seconds for you, and then 30 seconds an answer from Frans Timmermans.
So we all share that solidarity is a key issue for Europe, but again, responsibility. And on responsibility, I have to remind everyone that in the last 5 years it was Commissioner Moscovici, a socialist, responsible for the programming on the Euro question. It was Dijsselbloem, a former colleague of Frans Timmermans as minister from the Netherlands, who was chairing the ECOFIN, so the Euro group, which did the necessary decisions on reforming. And today it's a socialist finance minister from Portugal who is chairing this ECOFIN group, the responsible body, the Euro group, the responsible body who is doing the necessary steps. So I think everybody should take over responsibility. The socialists should not attack their own policies.
Thank you, Manfred Weber. Frans Timmermans, you can answer. You have 30 seconds.
Sure. This had nothing to do with what I said. Pierre Moscovici looked at the plans and said they're okay. Jean-Claude Juncker looked at the plans of Portugal and said, okay, this can work. And then Manfred Weber said from the European Parliament, no, we will not allow this, you should punish Portugal, they shouldn't do this. And this is what happened. It worked. Social justice is bigger in Portugal. Jobs have increased enormously in Portugal because they put an end to austerity. And that is what more governments should be doing.
Thank you very much, Frans Timmermans. And last in line on that is Keller, please.
I think the austerity measures that have been taken in Europe have really done a big damage. It has done a damage to people personally. People were deprived of their jobs. I mean, it's young people very much, but it's not just young people. But it has also really given a blow to that European promise of that we would be jointly creating prosperity. So I think it was a big mistake for every sort of measure. And we shouldn't forget, if a young person is unemployed, that will mean that young person will have a lower income in the future as well. So tackling youth unemployment is crucial, and it's an issue for the whole of the European Union, not just from single member states or regions. So we should make the youth guarantee binding everywhere, and it needs to be fully financed. And we need to make sure that we have the right jobs in the future. Investing in the green economy, even the Commission has said it will create hundreds of thousands of jobs. So why do we wait with that? Why not start with making sure that investments we do are exactly targeted towards the social and ecological transition of our economy?
Thank you, Keller. Jan Zahradil, want to say you something?
I have a question for Mr. Timmermans, if I may. How would you agree that there is a very diverse level of unemployment in individual member countries? You have over 10% in some countries, and you have less than 3% in some other countries. Would you agree that this is a very good evidence, a very good example, that in fact national governments and national parliaments are better able to create tailor-made solutions for their own labour markets than the European Commission can do?
Well, would you agree with me that if we had applied the same reasoning on structural funds for new member states 15 years ago, the Czech Republic would not be as prosperous today. The unemployment in the Czech Republic would not be as low as it is today.
I wouldn't agree.
So without structural funds this would have happened?
They were helpful. They were helpful.
Exactly. And this was an expression of European solidarity. Would you not agree with me that it's also an expression of European solidarity? Not just to say we have low unemployment figures, but we care about the fact that in Southern Europe more than 30% of the young people are unemployed, and we will help solve that.
Thank you very much, Franz Timmermans. And I hope you understand why I encouraged you to use your rebuttal cards. So we are getting kind of a debate now. Thank you all. Thank you, Ska Keller. Thank you all for your first answers on migration and on youth unemployment. Old-fashioned here on the stage, but let's have a look at the fancy social media stage.
Yes, it has been great to see that thousands of you are already getting involved. The hashtag Tell Europe has been mentioned more than 7,000 times. And let's see how far that goes by the end of the night. I really hope to see the Finns here too, because, you know, last night we didn't do that well in the semi-finals of the Eurovision Song Contest. So make your voice be heard tonight, and all you other Europeans, of course, too. And speaking of engagement, many of you sent us your reasons for going to vote at the upcoming elections. In a European Parliament poll, you told us that you are voting to fight climate change, change Europe for the better, to stop so-called toxic nationalism, and to keep democracy going. So how is the online community responding to our first topics? Let's have a look. Migration, it has definitely provoked a very heated discussion. This user from Belgium would like to see EU citizens allowed to support migrants with shelter and food. And I can also tell you that there is huge interest in climate change. Many of you have sent in all kinds of questions on this subject. From Germany, we have a direct question asking candidates what they will do to fight climate change and to prevent crisis. We'd like to hear more from the candidates, so let's get back to the debate.
Thank you, Anasina, for the perfect transition, because we can move on the next topic, environment and climate change. You all see, there are thousands of Europeans, young Europeans, out on the streets with Greta Thunberg, with the Fridays for Future movement. Every other week, we get a new scientific report urging politicians like you to act, but still, effective climate protection could prove very expensive. Jobs in the coal or car industry could be lost. Energy could cost ordinary people more money. So our question to the candidate is, do you think we have to make these sacrifices in order to protect the planet, our planet? What would you do more, or what would you do less? Please name concrete proposal. Margrethe Vestager.
Well, of course, it's a risk, but I think we can make the most of it by looking at it as an opportunity, because millions of jobs can be created. For instance, building high-speed rails in Europe to connect our cities, to make sure that people can get around, out of the planes, down to the trains. That is very specific, that can work. And second, a lot of things is now prepared. We have set targets, we have the legislation to reform our markets, now we can go do. A lot of the technology we need, we have it already. So we can invest European funds and national funds. And, of course, we can research even more than we do today. But we don't need to wait for technology. We have so many things to do already. And the greatest thing is that while we do something systemically, each and every one of us can take part by our personal choices. But we can never just decentralize it to each and every citizen, because this is something that we'll have to do together.
Thank you very much, Margrethe Vestager. Ska Keller, I assume you take the climate goals very serious, but are the Greens also ready to accept job losses to achieve them?
We take this issue very serious, and I think we all should, because this is a serious urgency. We only have one single planet, and we need to protect it. We cannot do a compromise and say to the climate, just wait a bit, we're still not sure what to do. No, we can't do that. But the good thing is that we know what to do. The policy instruments, the measures that we need to take, we know them. We have them on the table. We just need to do them. And that has been a problem that, unfortunately, other groups present here have constantly voted against progress in fighting that climate crisis. And it really is a crisis, especially if we combine it with the loss of biodiversity. So this is really a hot and very important issue that we have to address.
What would you do?
What I would do is, for example, stopping the climate harmful subsidies that we're spending every year at the European Union level. There's billions of euros that we should stop putting into the wrong use and put it into good use. For example, in climate-friendly technology, which, for example, also creates a lot of jobs. All the new jobs that would be created in a climate-friendly technology and economy, that would be here to stay. Right now, we're letting them go to China.
Thank you. Thank you. Frans Timmermans, as the Vice President of the European Commission, do you heard the young European into the street? Do you heard the report of the scientific?
Yep, it's what I hear everywhere I go, every day, 10 times a day, every day. First of all, let me say, Ska Keller has said some clear words about this. Mr. Coué is one of the leading politicians in the European Parliament on climate change and on the environment. The three of us already have a quite good record in the last 5 years in the European Parliament. My offer to them is let's work together in the next 5 years so that we make sure the next Commission puts the climate crisis on the top of its agenda. And I'm sure we will also convince many people in the Liberal family so that we create an alliance going from Tsipras all the way to Macron to make sure we put this on the highest level of our agenda. But concretely, why are we not taxing kerosene? We're taxing the fuel in the cars and in the trains, but not in the airplanes. Unacceptable. Why are we not introducing a CO2 tax for all companies in Europe? A CO2 tax which revenues we can then bring back to the people so that they can make their housing sustainable, for instance. So why are we not introducing these measures? We can do that. We can do that if we agree with the member states and if we enforce this also with the help of the European Parliament.
Thank you very much, Frans Timmermans. And I think we saw the first stage of coalition building here, but I assume we go to the opposition now. Jan Zahradil, what would you do more on climate protection or perhaps less?
Look, I came from that part of Europe, Central Eastern Europe, which 30 years ago was one of the most polluted parts, not only of Europe, but of the world. Now, over those 30 years, we have reduced the air pollution for hundreds of %. So it is achievable, but it has to be done in a socially sustainable way and gradually while introducing new technologies. And that's what I'm calling for. Socially sustainable way and gradual phasing, right timetable. So let's not put unrealistic targets ahead of us. Let's commit those commitments. Let's fulfill those commitments we have signed, for instance, the Paris Climate Agreement. And when it comes to the Commission could and should change the way how, for instance, our subsidies from a common agriculture policy paid. They should be more environmentally oriented, more subsidized organic farming, small farming, and not only production oriented. And there is one more, actually, a good program which was already devised by the Commission, and I have to praise the Commission for that. It's called 1 hectare. And this,
Thank you.
I will explain it later.
We're sorry for that.
Yeah.
6.
Thank you, Jan Zahradil. Nico.
Well, I'd like to thank the young people who, for the many weeks now, have been going out on the streets because they get the impression that they are not being listened to. And it's true, they haven't been listened to. We hear lots of fine words from European politicians, but there haven't been any concrete measures taken. We are not attacking the big polluters, the multinationals who are responsible for more than 70% of pollution at the international level. We're doing nothing there. Rather, we're pushing this on to citizens, taxing the citizens, as Macron has done in France. That is totally unacceptable. There is an industrial tradition in Europe, Galileo, Airbus. Why can't we go back to taking a public initiative to deal with the climate crisis? We can't simply say there's no money, we found $3 billion to save the banks. And, Mr. Timmermans, tax evasion is at about 800 billion.
And we take it to Manfred Weber. Would you be more ambitious on climate protection than the actual acting Commission now?
2050, to achieve a European Union which is carbon neutral. That is our common goal. And that's why I cannot understand why we create here divisions when we have common understanding about what to do for the future. The EPP is clearly committed to this goal. But on the way, how we achieve this, there are discussions necessary, because I don't accept that the losers of the development will be the pensioners, the poor people in our societies, will be the industrial workers of the car industry. We have a lot of concerns about whether they can manage this transitional period. There are a lot of concerns on the table, rural areas again. And that's why we have to make it in a way that everybody can respect it. And when I refer to my EPP party, I tell you it was the Commissioner Arias Canetti, an EPP commissioner, who presented all the initiatives in the fight against climate change. Our day achievements are together with the EPP voice, and I will continue.
Thank you, Manfred Weber. Franz Timmermans, you want to challenge?
Well, just very briefly, I mean, we just, an NGO went through the voting in the European Parliament over the last 5 years, and they called the EPP dinosaurs. So there is a problem there. It's not my word, it's what the NGO did, just looking at the voting. But secondly, I'm sick and tired of the excuse it's going to hurt pensioners, it's going to hurt socially weak people. You know what's really going to hurt? If we do nothing. If we do nothing, we will be in a climate crisis of incredible proportions. If we do nothing, it's the poor people who will suffer first. They have no way to go somewhere else to avoid this crisis. We need to act. The longer we wait, the more expensive it is and the harder it is on poor people.
Manfred Weber.
Again, from Franz Timmermans, great words, but not concrete actions, you see. We need concrete actions now, and that is necessary for achieving the goal. And I tell you, the trade emission system which we established into the European Union, we can expand this to the aviation sector. That would be an important step. Or to look for the question how we can now boost innovation. I believe as an engineer, I am an environmental engineer by my profession. I believe in innovation, not in punishment, not in bans, not in regulatory framework. I believe in innovation. And that's why establishing an horizon which is investing in technologies which are capable to solve the problems, that is what we have to do.
Okay, but thank you very much. Time is up for that, and we have a lot of further questions on that because we have 2 more rebuttal cards. First, Ska Keller.
I do think we have great differences among the groups, among the parties on the climate issue, because some only talk about the climate and others, like, we want to do something about it very concretely. So my very concrete question to Manfred Weber is on that. If you're saying emission trading is great, then why did you vote, personally, why did your group vote against reforming the ETS and making it actually workable? Right now we're giving out so many free certificates that they can go for free and even trade the certificates among themselves, the very big companies. Why did you vote against that? Why did the EPP vote against more ambitious climate targets? This is not at all what real climate action looks like.
Before we give it to Manfred Weber, just very briefly, ETS means emission trading system, for those of you who are not familiar with that abbreviation. Manfred Weber, please.
Exactly, because my party is a party who's trying to bring things together. We can be ambitious, and that's the job of the Greens in a way, to be very strong on climate change. But again, I had a meeting with the trade unions, not with EPP voters mainly, with trade unions, socialists, who told me if you implement the goals of the Greens, then we have no future for our jobs. And that's why let's be sustainable. Sustainability from the United Nations means ecological ambition, also economic stability, and also the question of sustainability in the technological fields. Bring things together and not split them up.
Weber, you will answer again, because Margrethe Vestager want to challenge you.
And this is because you sort of insist that my colleague, Miguel, is a EPP. But he didn't make amazing work because he's EPP. He did that because he's part of the Commission. My colleague, Violetta, she didn't pave the way to decarbonize transportation because she's liberal. We work together as a college. And this is not a party congregation, because climate change is so much bigger than any of us that party affiliation plays a role. And second, we have so many tools already. Why not just put that into use instead of just waiting?
Thank you.
But Margrethe, That was exactly my starting point when I said, let's not create a division on this, because on the goal, we are on the same side. And frankly speaking, you know that in the liberal group, there are a lot of friends who share the concerns about the speed of implementation. Again, 2050, we have to have a carbon neutral industry. And I'm strongly committed to do so, but not to punish the poor, to do it with innovation, with offers, to get the next steps and to be strong on this.
Thank you very much, Manfred Weber. And there was still one more challenge from Nico, also to you.
Well, I think it's pretty unbearable to hear this kind of discourse. You shut the Florange and Liège blast furnace 7 or 8 years ago. The unionists came up with all kinds of proposals to create special steels that didn't need to be washed and that would have actually promoted and pushed production levels for recycling of these materials. Imagine the number or the quantity of detergents that we wouldn't have poured down the drains and produced in Europe. But instead, with Mr. Tajani, you prefer to plump with Mr. Mittal and allow these blast furnaces to be shut down and allowed steel to be brought in from outside of Europe, and which will pollute the world twice as much.
I want to comment in a way that we have to understand that Europeans are ambitious, but for the next Commission presidency, the main goal could be also to convince the rest of the world to follow, because we cannot alone rescue the climate. We have to do it together with the other friends and with the other partners on global level. And that's why the European Commission, the European Union, must be ambitious on the global stage to work for a global development, for engagement on global level to fight together against climate change. That is what I want to do.
Well, start in Europe, for goodness sake.
Answers, and we go further to the next topic. The next topic is one that might come across slightly technically, but I think it's one that annoys many people across the continent because it's a symbol of unfairness and injustice. Multinational corporations like Apple, Google or Nike are paying only marginal taxes of often less than 5%, whereas we as ordinary citizens have to pay between 20 and 40%. Our question to the candidates is, which countries in the European Union are, in your opinion, tax havens? And how do you change their behavior to make sure that Amazon pays as much taxes as the bookseller next door? We start with Margrethe Vestager.
Well, I have dealt with this firsthand. So you're very generous when you say that some only pay 5%, because someone pays 0.05% in some years, as we saw it in the Apple case. So there is indeed work to do. And what we have seen is now member states, they change taxation in Ireland, in the Netherlands, in Luxembourg, in Belgium, in Malta, in Cyprus, because change is coming. And we have changed the legislation all over. But we need two things. We need digital taxation, because a lot of these companies, they are escaping, and most other companies, they actually do pay their taxes. This is unfair. And second, we need to put a floor under corporate taxation as such, because otherwise it will just be a race to the bottom. And we need companies to contribute to societies where they do a very good business. And the case is, so many businesses do that already, and we need tax fairness.
Very briefly, the countries you named, are they tax havens?
But for me, a tax haven is a place where everyone pays their taxes.
Thank you, Margrethe Vestager. Keller, are you as optimistic as Margrethe Vestager? Change is coming?
I really hope so, because this is a real serious scandal that we're having right now. I mean, you mentioned how little taxes are being paid by the big companies, so the strongest members, so to say, of society are running away from their responsibility. And that is costing us so much taxpayers' money that we don't have to build schools, to repair hospitals, to have a good educational healthcare system. So absolutely it is key that we have tax justice. This is part of social justice. So we need to indeed have a tax for the digital big companies that can easily evade taxation, and we need to have a minimum tax rate for companies. But what we also need is transparency, and this needs to go for every company. And there we have already tried to establish rules for the transparency, so that it's clear how many employees does a company have in one country or not, because this gets attention. Unfortunately, the Liberals as well as the Conservatives and the further Conservatives moderators, have voted for exemptions to this transparency. But I think there should be no exemption to transparency. Transparency goes for everyone.
Thank you very much, Ska Keller. And next in line, Franz Timmermans, your home country was already mentioned. Is it a tax haven?
Well, they've seen the writing on the wall that this doesn't work anymore, and they're changing it. It was about time, actually. And I agree fully with Margrethe when she says we need a corporate tax minimum level in the whole of Europe. I would say let's put 18% as a minimum level, and then you have a fair playing field, and then countries can decide to do more, but they can no longer decide to do less. The thing is, the economy has changed so fundamentally. We are in the fourth industrial revolution. We have companies who have found ways not to pay taxes at all. Margrethe is right. These big companies don't pay taxes. So we should keep asking Alexa, Amazon, when are you going to pay taxes?
Thank you very much. And since we still have 20 seconds, I would like to ask you, if you propose 18% corporate tax, how do you get Ireland agreeing on that?
I think, they are seeing that this is hurting their economy in the long run anyway. These big warehouses with nobody's working is not in the interest of any economy. And so I think we can convince everyone to follow that road. It's also an element of European solidarity. I'm even sure we can convince my own country in this.
Thank you. Thank you, Franz Timmermans. Zahradil, what do you think about transparency
Well, first of all, I have to say that there will be probably a very fundamental difference amongst us, because I believe that states have the right to tax businesses, and European Union is not a state. Maybe some people wish European Union to be a state, and in that case, I understand that they are calling for pan-European taxes. I don't. I believe, however, that, of course, tax evasion should be forbidden. I believe that there were good steps made forward.
How?
There is an exchange of information for every company whose turnover is bigger than 750 million euros, whether it pays regular taxes here or there. So we can easily identify those who do not pay taxes, and they can be taxed on a national level. I don't think that they should be taxed on a pan-European level. And by the way, I have to say that Commissioner Vestager did a very good job on that, on finding level playing field and on trying to find a proper competitive environment for European businesses.
Thank you very much, Jan Zahradil. And Nico, do you agree that it's none of Europe's business, taxation, more or less?
Pas du tout.
Not at all. I think we've got to recognise that in Europe we have got whole areas where all the public services have been done away with. The hospitals, the schools, public transport. Frontline services have been taken away, and that they have to be in existence to spend the tax money on. Even harmonising taxation at a European level and getting rid of the tax dumping, which mars the landscape in Europe. That's been going on for years. Those were plans, but nothing has materialised, nothing's come of that. So I think it's time to go from fine words to hard action on tax fraud. 850 billion. How many schools, how much public services, healthcare, how much could you get for 850 billion euros? And let's have the common decency to say that there are whistleblowers. They are key in lambasting what's happening, and they should be protected and not attacked. Thank you very much.
Manfred Weber.
I was a proud European when the European Commission decided to act against Ireland. Margrethe, you and Jean-Claude Juncker, to make clear that Apple has to pay their fair contribution to our European societies. And that is what we have to continue, to use our economic strengths, our regulatory framework, to make clear that everybody has to pay. And we have to answer one question, because we share to fight against tax havens, we share that we need a digital taxation. I want to use the money of such a digital taxation for the transforming process, for those who are the losers of the digitalization. So we share the common idea, but the big question is how to do it, and that's why we have to change in some special fields in taxation from the unanimous vote to the majority-making decision process. That it's a test, let me say, whether we really believe in this approach of a common European engagement. Generally speaking, I believe in tax competition, but in special fields like the digital taxation, we need a common European role.
Thank you, Madam Miller. I just mentioned at this stage of this debate, you all use your first rebuttal card, so you have still one and the last rebuttal card to challenge other candidates. Thank you for your answer. Environment, taxation, there are certainly hot topics. We experienced that. Lestina, how is it online?
Yes, we're back at the social media hub, and you've been very, very busy online using the hashtag Tell Europe and making your voice heard, so I want to thank you for that. To give you a better sense of what people are saying online, I would like to show you a word cloud. So climate and green, they are definitely the most popular keywords being typed in, and as you can see, many of you are also interested in getting to know the candidates themselves, and also knowing more about the Commission and the elections, which are taking place from the 23rd to the 26th of May. And another very popular topic we have come across is gender equality. This person would like to know how candidates are going to tackle the gender pay cap. And with the rise of Eurosceptics and populist movements in several European countries, some of you have also expressed some general distrust towards the European Union. Here is a tweet from Germany that I think sums up what some people, some of you feel. They think that EU is, people feel that it's not well enough explained what the EU does and what it is. So keep sending in your comments and questions with the hashtag #TellEurope, and let's continue the debate online and on the main stage.
Thank you very much, Anastina, and we turn to questions about our external politics. The EU in a world dominated by the US and by China. More and more often, the EU finds itself in an arm-twisting situation with those powers, be it on the Iran nuclear deal, be it on Nord Stream 2, be it on free trade. Time and again, US President Donald Trump threatens to impose new tariffs on European goods. So this is a very broad topic, but we like to get a feeling of your stance in these questions. And our question to you as candidates for the European Commission, in order to strike a deal with Donald Trump, which will probably be one of your tasks as a Commission President, and to avoid damage for the European economy, are you willing to open European markets to American agricultural products, including genetically modified ones, as Trump apparently demands? First answer from Keller, please.
No. But I also think we need to think a bit further and really consider which role should the European Union play in the world. And I think we would have an important role to play. And we need to consider which this should be, and we need to be united in that. My idea is that Europe should be a force of peace and of human rights in the world. This is something where we can really send out a strong signal. And we're already doing something, right? We're the biggest donor for human rights activists in the world. But we're not being coherent. At the same time that we're the biggest human rights activist donor, we're also, as European Union member states, sending weapons to dictators, sometimes the same that oppress them. So we need to be coherent. We need to stop those weapons exports into conflict areas, which also send people on the move that then have to flee. We should stop being a haven for dictators that put their money into European banks, for example. We need to be coherent, and we need to care about human rights wherever and whenever.
Thank you, Keller. Franz Timmerman, how to be poor in front of United States, China?
Well, if we're united, we're stronger than them. We are. But if we have leaders in Europe who are best buddies with Vladimir Putin and go and ask him for money, who then go on an audience to Donald Trump, who wants to weaken and break up the European Union. And, how can we create unity? We have to understand what is at stake for us as Europeans. The first time in living history that there's an American president who thinks it's in his interest to have a weak and divided Europe. That's dangerous for us. Weak and divided, we will not be able to stand up for our values in the world. So we need European unity, and we need to convince those political forces who think that Putin is their best friend, all the way from Farage to Salvini to Strache. All these people should understand they are not acting in the best interest of European citizens. We need to be united. We need to stand firm against Trump, firm against Putin. If we do not do that, they will dictate the tone and the content of the music. We cannot allow that for the sake of our citizens.
Thank you very much, Franz Timmermans. Manfred Weber, can we just say no on everything to Trump? He will pressure us, I think.
No, not at all, because the Americans are still our friends. The American people are our friends. We have so much common values in mind when we speak about the freedom of press, about the independent judiciary, about the gender balance and the democracy. So there is so much which we have in common. That's why I don't fight against the American people. But what is happening in the White House is not our approach of doing politics. That's why we have to be strict and clear. I would offer to the American president, let's do a deal on the industrial goods. So let's do so on trade, but only if we practice partnership. If he wants to force us, Europe has to stand up and has to act accordingly. That's why strength and unity of Europe is necessary. And again, we need the mechanism discussed. So today we have in our external affairs the idea of unanimous vote. That's why Europe cannot act. Europe is not quick enough, like we saw it in the Venezuelan case. And that's why we have to change towards a majority-making decision process. Only with such a new mechanism, we can bring the whole strength of Europe, our value base, alive for a strong Europe on global stage.
Thank you, Manfred Weber. Nico, what do you think about the relations with the United States, China?
Well, I think that free trade agreements often weaken Europe because we don't manage to get our partners to follow social and environmental standards. I think it's a shame when we are the largest economy in the world. If you add together all of Europe's countries, we need to ensure that European living standards are respected. Free trade agreements need to be fair, but they are being put in the hands of private forms of justice that member states fall victim to. Well, I'll give you an example. Veolia questioned the Egyptian minimum wage due to this private arbitration that could simply overrule states. We need to be looking at the rules in these kinds of treaties. They affect farmers, industries, the whole of our populations in Europe. That is how that we will move forward.
Thank you, Nico Kue. Mr. Zahradil, would you talk about agricultural goods?
Well, first of all, I have to say that trade for us, for Europe, is the major engine of economic growth. And I think that we should negotiate with the United States because transatlantic market is a huge opportunity, regardless who is at the moment US president. But it is not the only market. There are also other markets. And I was very happy, as a vice chair of the International Trade Committee, that we conducted, for instance, the free trade agreement with Japan, which created the largest free trade area in the world, covering about 30% of the global GDP. And I think it's a good news. I think we should continue that. And I think we should focus, in times where protectionism is rising, we should focus on the goal to be a pioneer of a free trade. And we should try to conduct more free trade agreements, particularly with Asian countries, because this is where economic future of the world lies.
Thank you very much, Jens Vestager. As a European Commissioner for competition, you were confronted with other countries, with other power. What do you want to answer?
Well, there's room for a much more confident Europe. As Nico just said, this is the biggest economic bloc in the world. We're the biggest trading partner. We're the preferred partner for 80 countries. So a much more confident Europe, maybe also slightly more hard-nosed. Because if we give access to our markets, we should have access to other markets as well. And when we ask fair competition within Europe, we should also stand up for our businesses if they are met with unfair competition outside of Europe. And that we need to push much further than what we have done so far. And what we have retired is basically Do you want me to stop talking? I read your body language like that?
Completely correctly.
Go on, please.
Well, thank you very much. No, the point is to say that we have retired sort of the old concept of free trade and instead said we need to trade in a value-based way. Because we have interest when it comes to how agriculture is done, how animals are treated, how human rights play a role. And this is why the trade agreements with Japan, with Canada, are such good news. Because this is the way you can make trade a positive input, and that creates millions of jobs.
Thanks, Margrethe Vestager. There was another rebuttal from Nico.
But we don't know who you want to challenge, so...
Monsieur Timmermans.
I'd like to challenge Mr. Timmermans, because Mr. Timmermans, Vice President of the European Commission, and I know that in his political family, at least in Wallonia, there was a lot of pushback against the CETA treaty with Paul Magnette as the chairman for Wallonia. We still don't understand how it can be that if you have a number of different visions for the future through this treaty, you can accept that it is negotiated beyond the states themselves and in some kind of extrajudicial European forum. Are we not sufficiently democratic and strong for us to debate this with the European citizens so that democracy can really take its place? Well, I can tell you straight away that what Paul Magnette said and what you did together really influenced very heavily the nature of the treaty. That really made a difference. You talked about arbitration, but actually it's much more public now than it was, and that's even been confirmed by the Court of Justice in Luxembourg. So your actions and what Paul Magnette did really helped us push ahead in that direction, which was much more public. But we haven't reached the end of the road yet. We've got a lot more to do, but already the trade treaties are not just things that are decided on by experts, but they're part of the public debate.
Alfred Weber, you want to use your last rebuttal card too, but do you want to challenge?
Representative of the left, Mr. Keller, I want to reflect on the trade issue because today 36 million jobs in today's European Union depend on trade. We are a trading continent. The whole economic strength is based on trade. And that's why I cannot understand why the left parties, the Greens, the left party in the group, and also the socialists are not stable on the question, say yes to use trade as a tool for making the world a better place. I would include in all the trade agreements for the future a paragraph to abolish child labor, for example, on global level. Let's use the trade issue for making the world a better place, and left, you cannot count on this, on the left, on this question of trade issues.
Nico, you can answer, please.
De nouveau, c'est des discours, mais dans votre
Well, again, that's fine words, but in practice, social, environmental standards are going all the way down because of those free trade agreements. We haven't got the machinery, we haven't got agencies, at least that, which can stand up to the reduction of living conditions for Europeans, because what you always say is a discourse that doesn't allow Europeans to maintain their standard of living. There is a domestic consumption in Europe, which is substantial. We're a big market, and millions of people who are working for this internal economy. And with your international treaties, the free trade agreements, it kills off that vitality right in the heart of Europe.
Yes, because I have been rebutted as well, so I guess I'm getting 30 seconds on that as well. I do think that trade can play an important role, but we have to see it as an instrument to get to a goal and not as a goal in itself as it's currently being always treated. The more trade agreements we have, the merrier, but we need to watch out what they do. And for example, if we just liberalize all services, then this is also not good for the European economy. If we just extract raw materials from other countries, this is really not good for achieving a global and multilateral system of development. So we really need to be careful what trade is done, how, and for what aim.
Thank you very much. Last rebuttal card Who do you want to challenge on this topic, please?
I have a question for Mr. Weber, because to my great surprise, he said that he would support a qualified majority vote for a foreign policy. And I still believe that foreign policy is something which is driven by national interest and by a very concept of state sovereignty. And we see, for instance, that in Libya, Italy is supporting General Haftar, while France is supporting, or it's vice versa. One country is supporting that warlord, while other country is supporting the legitimate government in Tripoli. So how you can put this together, and how you can push one country by majority vote to take completely different stance? I don't believe that it could work, and it would only deepen the divide amongst European countries.
Well, the question is not how to manage it. The first question is it necessary? And sorry, when we see exactly what is happening in Libya, when we see, for example, this development in Venezuela, it took 4 weeks of time to manage a common European position against the communist regime of Maduro. 4 weeks of time, due to some individuals, especially from Greece and Italy. And that is not the Europe I dream about. I dream of a Europe which stands up for our values, for democracy, for rule of law, for the freedom, which is the title of Europe, the freedom of our continent. And that is only possible if we come to a majority-making decision process. Let's make Europe strong in these questions.
Thanks.
I fight for this.
Thanks, Manfred Weber. And another rebuttal card from Margrethe Vestager.
It's just
so whom are you challenging?
I would just like to discuss trade with SCAR, because I think there is also a climate change dimension here. For instance, we have a Slovenian company who are very famous in developing electrical planes. We have great European companies who develop pumps, wind turbines. We have a way of organizing how to transform waste to resources. And all of those solutions are exportable. And you cannot export if you cannot trade, and use trade as an instrument also when it comes to bringing the world together, when it comes to using the best possible solutions that we know already.
I agree. And yes, we don't want to stop trade, but indeed it needs to take care, for example, of the climate dimension. In the current trade agreements, that is not in anywhere. We don't take into account, for example, all the CO2 emissions that we're creating. The Paris Agreement is not mentioned in any of the trade agreements. Even human rights are totally just a nice addition, decoration, but they're not sanctionable. So we need to put the Paris Agreement, our climate targets that we have all agreed in, into the trade agreements, and that we have tried to do. We haven't so far gotten a majority in the European Parliament, but we're struggling for that, because indeed the Paris Agreement, the climate goals need to be everywhere, also in the trade agreements.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think you all use your rebuttal card. Only Franz Timmermans, you have a last rebuttal card, so we are waiting for it. Thank you all for your answers. So our final topic is the increasing feeling of many people that the European Union doesn't function anymore. The British voted to leave the Union. In Hungary, Viktor Orban wins election with the slogan, "Stop Brussels." In Italy, Matteo Salvini clearly rides the same waves. And European values are under threat. There are already rule of law procedures against Poland, Hungary, with more to come. And turnout for the election has steadily declined over the decade. So our question to the candidate is, how do you explain the rise of Euroscepticism, and what is your share of responsibility? Keller.
I would even say that the problem is bigger. The name of the problem is bigger. It's nationalism. It's dividing the European Union. There's forces that want to destroy the European Union and that also don't recognize the human rights of other human beings. That is the problem that we face in Europe. And there's a lot of things that, of course, we need to do about that, can do about. And I think one very important one is not to give them too much space, because it's not a law of nature that they have to become bigger and bigger. And they're not, if we look around in different European countries. We all, as Europeans, take part in the decision of how much space we give those nationalist forces in the European elections. And also, as European parties, we need to take a decision. Are we collaborating with those extremist forces? Unfortunately, the EPP, we have that situation in Austria, where you have been partnering with the FPÖ. We have the whole Orban issue that hasn't been solved yet. So I think it's a problem of whether we should take distance, whether we say we stand strongly on the basis of European values and human rights, or we don't do it.
Thank you very much, Ska Keller. Franz Timmermans, what is your share of responsibility, be it politics, be it communications of the actual acting European Commission?
Let's be very clear. People who used to vote for my party and many parties here are now voting for nationalist parties, sometimes even extremist parties. That's our fault. Apparently, we did not convince them to stay with us. Apparently, they believe in these propositions. They're now being disappointed. Look at what the divisiveness of Brexit has done to the United Kingdom. Today, the United Kingdom looks like Game of Thrones on steroids. And that's because of this divisive politics.
Tomorrow's headline.
That's because of this divisive politics. So we have a collective responsibility to offer propositions to our citizens that will make them come back to the European project, will make them come back to parties, all the parties around the table here, who have constructive propositions for the future. This is the only way forward. And yes, we are to blame, but we do have solutions. And we talked about these solutions tonight. Everybody has his idea about this, but we come together on this idea of creating European unity to solve the problems that are facing us in the future.
Thank you, Franz Timmermans. Nico, what do you want to say?
L'unité européenne existait.
Well, the European Union existed, but it's being dismantled. There is a risk that it could be dismantled because we have seen austerity policies of an unheard of violence used against southern European countries. That is why we shouldn't be surprised to see people turning to radical alternatives. You should see what the fascists are doing now in Italy, Hungary and elsewhere. But we need to make a choice. Either you choose the markets and you are constantly submissive to the law of the market, or you take a choice to support people, the people who live in Europe. They are the ones that we need to be addressing and looking after. But what have we been doing? We've been cutting their pensions, increasing the retirement age, reducing the public services, giving them a feeling of malaise that is such that people think that by withdrawing into their nation states they can be better protected. The responsibility is in your hands. You are the ones who have pursued these policies.
The two left rebuttal cards are with Ska Keller and Franz Timmermans, if I'm not mistaken, but now it's Manfred Weber's turn.
My party, the EPP, the Christian Democrats on this continent, are among the founding parties of today's European Union. And we see that nationalism and egoism is back on this continent. And what we have to do over the 26th of May for this year's elections, we have to fight against those who want to destroy our Europe. We have to defend our Europe, no doubt about this. And there are two elements important. One element is, if we want to answer, we have to make Europe democratic. In the Brexit case, the main message of the Brexiteers was, I want to have my sovereignty back. People feel not that Europe is my Europe, and I want to change this. This chamber, the European Parliament, is a place where the future of Europe must be decided. We need a democratic Europe for the future. And the second point I want to mention, we need a mechanism to defend our values. They are challenged in the European Union. And that's why a binding, independent rule of law mechanism for the future, where we can also use the funds, the money of Europe, to sanction those who are not ready to respect our fundamental principles. That is what I fight for.
Thank you, Margrethe Weber. Zahradil, as a leader of Reformists, Conservatives, do you want to defend Europe?
Well, I think that the main problem is that people, ordinary people in European countries that do not care about everyday politics, are somehow tired from endless European integration. They feel that European Union is interfering into their everyday lives, that it is threatening their traditional ways of life, their social customs and things like that. So yes, I am very in favor of European integration and European Union as well, but at the beginning, I want Europe that is doing less but better, slimmer, scaled back, flexible, decentralized. I don't think that more Europe and more Europe and more Europe is a universal response for each and every problem, like, unfortunately, EPP and socialists that were running the European business European business 25 years, and I don't believe that they will be able to come with some genuine change.
Thank you, Jan Zahradil. Frans Timmermans, your last protocol.
I think Mr. Zahradil knows extremely well that I've had a difference of opinion with the Polish government, whose party is part of his group, over the last 3 years. And people were saying, oh, don't do this, it will lead to Polexit, people will be with you. How does Mr. Zahradil then explain that after 3 years of very, very tough conflicts with this government, the support for the European Union in Poland is higher than 3 years ago? The Polish people attach more importance to Europe than ever before. They want to be part of this community of values. Give them that. Don't withhold that from them.
Thank you. Frans Timmermans.
I'm not stealing the European Union from the Polish people, but I give you another example from my own country. 90% of Czech citizens, of course, want to stay in the European Union, so that means that they somehow like the idea of European integration, while 75% of my citizens do not want to adopt the euro. So there is a clear example that people somehow like the European Union, but do not like everything which comes from the European Union. And we have to find the right balance between the European level and the national level, which unfortunately has been shifted too much in favor of the European level.
Thank you very much. And to Margrethe Vestager, what makes people turn away from the EU, and do you see any self-criticism?
I think there are many reasons. And if you want to change things, you need to change yourself first. In the way we talk. We talk very often as if we were keeping a secret, with all the abbreviations we use. Last year we got digital citizens' right. That we call GDPR. How can you expect anyone to appreciate that? We need to speak in a different way. We need to take off the labels when people come to say this is a problem and discuss it for real. But then, of course, we also have to oblige ourselves to tell the truth. And what is now done to fight all the fake news and all the junk news that we see out there, that is part of the solution, to give people real food for thought and invite them back to a real discussion about how we unite our national democracies and our European democracy to make it work in everyday life.
Thank you very much, Margrethe Vestager. We are behind our schedule, so very quickly to Anastina, what's going on in the social media world?
Well, we have had thousands of people engaging with us, 5,000 people watching on YouTube, 28,000 on Facebook, 7,000 on Twitter. And in fact, we have been trending so far on Twitter in Belgium, Denmark, Germany, Ireland, France and Finland. Hyvä Suomi, kiitos. And while many of you have submitted questions on specific topics, a number of you have also asked about broader issues. So, for example, from Italy we have a question from a true pan-European citizen who asks, why should I feel represented by one of your national parties? So, back to the main stage.
The candidates now have one final opportunity to ask for your support. So the six of you stage would like to lead Europe for the next years. So 1 minute to close. Frans Timmermans.
I just heard 40 seconds because we are behind the schedule. Starting with Frans Timmermans.
You have heard us today. You've heard all the differences. I hope it helps you make up your mind what you vote next week. But there's one thing I want to ask you. Whatever you choose, never become indifferent. Choose. Let your voice be heard. If you don't vote, somebody else will take your voice. It's like giving your money to somebody else to decide about your future. Vote in the European elections. Let your heart speak. Vote for the person or the party you believe will fix Europe's problems best. But vote. Never let yourself become indifferent.
Manfred Weber, please.
If I would have the chance to ask my grandfather, the grandfather's generation, what do you think about today's Europe? I think they would answer, the best Europe we ever saw. And for the 26th of May, for these European elections, it's first of all to defend it against the egoists, against the nationalists who are back in Europe. And I want to open the new chapter. I want to create optimism. I want to create future perspective for this European Union, for this great idea of a united Europe. And I say it again, I want to make it in a democratic way, where you have the say, where you decide about the composition of this chamber of the European Parliament, and you give us the advice, what are the top subjects what we have to deal with in the next upcoming 5 years. A democratic Europe and a strong Europe.
Thank you. Vestager.
Well, two things. First, it's important to show that we do change. And the most visible way to do it is to have a gender-balanced commission. The same number of men as the number of women. That reflects our societies. And second, the challenges we have been discussing today, they're difficult. We need each other to do it. But it takes courage to overcome ourselves and our differences, to find common solutions. The power to change comes from you. Voting is power. Go vote in this election and inspire people around you to go vote. Otherwise, other people will use it. Thank you.
I would say that probably no one here at this stage is happy with the state of play of the European Union, but each of us has a different recipe what to do with that. My country joined the European Union 15 years ago. I'm coming from a rather different part of Europe, maybe with a different life experience, and maybe with different paradigm of European integration. And I have a feeling that sometimes this is not widely understood in other parts of Europe, that we are more sensitive to questions like national sovereignty or national identity. So in order to work together, to live together, to cooperate together, we have to find the way how to sort it out, and we have to find the right balance between European level and national level, as I said at the beginning.
Thank you. Keller.
All over Europe, young people are taking to the streets because they fear for their future. And they turn that fear and the anger at the politicians not doing anything. They turn that fear and that anger into action. And we need to do the same. We need to act because there is hope for a better future. And yes, it can be done, but it does need change and it does need courage. And it does need a strong force in the European Parliament that will fight for climate protection, for a social Europe and for democracy, not just in words, but also in action. And that is our offer as Greens to all Europeans.
Well, we've just seen that European leaders, they talk a lot, but they don't get to the heart of the problems. They're not dealing with climate change, global warming, precariousness. They're not dealing with tax evasion. We want a Europe that actually takes these problems and deals with them by the horns. In Spain, we want people to vote for Europe, for feminism. In Italy, people are voting. We don't want them to vote for fascism. We want all European citizens to be able to vote for social states that actually give them a decent life. And we want Europe to completely change course. We're asking then for a vote for the European left, which is the only party that can really change direction.
And that brings us to the end of our debate. I hope you spotted somebody whom you think would make a good president of the next European Commission. But anyhow, please join us all in showing your appreciation for all the 6 candidates.
Thanks for this debate, but of course the conversation continues online. And Astina, what happened online?
Well, it was very lively. You sent us so many posts that we couldn't get to all of them, but we did note that some of you asked for more coverage on the European elections. And we also noted a tweet from a journalist from France Info that sums up what tonight's debate has been all about: a discussion that is respectful and meaningful.
Thank you very much, Anastina. And to all of you here in the Parliament and, of course, at home, don't forget to take your chance to vote from May 23rd to May 26th, wherever, depending on wherever you live.
But for now, from all the Eurovision debate team, for you, a very good night.
Guten Abend.
Hyvää yötä.
Bonne soirée.